So in last lesson, I got you in your design page to double click on your Get Date button, and it gave us this action listener with this action performed method inside. What we did was we set the text of our TXT output box to say a simple message, hello from Mr. Blair. Now if I run that, that's my TXT output box. When I hit my Get Date button, my message comes up on the screen. And at the end of the lesson, just before the bell went, I showed you how if I hit that again, all it's doing is overwriting the old message with the new message, which is identical, so it's actually not appearing to do anything. And I said we need to fix that. So let's fix that first. To do that, what we need to do is get what's already in TXT output and add our message to the end of it. So to do that, all we have to do is here, just before we have our double quotes there, I can say txt output dot get text plus my new message. So what's happening here is whenever I click my button, it's going to get the text that's already in TXT output. At the start, of course, that will be blank, and it's going to add my message to the end of that text. Then it's going to set the text to be that new message. So if I give that a run and I hit Get Date, and if I hit Get Date a second time, it then adds my message to the end of the old message. Now fairly clearly that's not quite what we want. So I'm going to go to here. I'd like a new line character in between the old message and the new message. Now I could do that here with a backslash n. That's a new line character. Now if I run that, that should work. Every time I hit Get Date, I'll get a new line with my message on it. That works nicely. Except the very first time we get a blank line. Because the first time it's saying, well, there's nothing there, but I'm going to put a new line character in straight away. They're my message. So to fix that, we're going to move that new line character from the start of the text to the end of the text. Now when I first run it, there's nothing in that text pane. So when I hit Get Date, it's going to put my message, then a new line character. Now we can't see that new line character, but it's there. That means the next time I hit Get Date, it's going to start there with my message and another new line character. And we have what is quite a tidy little arrangement. Now if I keep hitting Get Date, you'll notice something interesting happens. I'm getting more and more messages. It's not apparent, but I'm getting more and more messages, and we're looking at the bottom one, but we have no scroll bar. So what we need to do is we need to fix that. Okay. To fix that, I'm going to go to my design page. Takes a little while to load up. And I'm going to delete my TXT output. Now, of course, that will break my code because I'm referring to a TXT output that no longer exists. But here in the containers section is what we call a JScroll pane. Now I'm going to click on that. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make a rectangle, and then I can resize that so that it hits those little guidelines that we talked about. You do it by the corners if you find that easier to do. And this last one I'm going to bring down to just above my button. You find there's a little stop point. It sort of stops, pauses, to give you a decent sort of a border between the two. Now, this still won't run because it's not a text box, it's a scroll pane. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to rename that to SCR pane, because you know that I like that 3-letter prefix. Now, it's a container. We can't actually do anything with that until we put something in that container. So I'm just going to collapse everything down so I can just see my components. And I'm going to get my JText pane that we used the other day. And then as I move across, I've got 3 sections in my scroll pane. What's called the row header, you can see the name at the top, the column header, and the viewport. We want to drop our TXT pane here in the viewport. Text pane, I should say. Now, if you remember correctly, we renamed this to be TXT output. By renaming that, we've automatically fixed our error and we turned off the editable function. All right, so now we've got a scroll pane. What we can do is we can run it. I forgot to save it. Always do that. And as I hit get date now, I get major errors because I completely forgot to move my JText pane to the top like we did yesterday. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to delete JText pane from this line. I'm going to move right back to the top of my class, and after my private JFrame, I'm going to paste that back in after the word private. Now text output is actually being defined at the top so that my button can find it down here. No longer have an error. So let's run that, see how we go. And hit get date, get date, get date, and keep going till it goes over the page. And you can see now that I am successfully scrolling on the side there. If I want to look through my get dates, I can do that. Okay. Next, what we need to do is we need to not just put a silly message in, we need to connect back to our date server and get the current date. Now that we have a working scroll pane, what we're going to do now is we're going to get it to grab the date. To do that, I'm going to open up my old date client, because everything that's in this main method here, we need to copy across into our action method, action perform method. So literally everything there, I'm going to copy. Oops, going to the wrong place. Going to go back into my DateClientSwing, and I'm going to replace this line of text with everything that was in there. Now, as soon as I do that, it's going to have all sorts of trouble because it doesn't know where sockets are. If I save that, I should start to get some errors. It's not giving me errors. I'm going to go right back to the top and have a look at what's in my imports. As soon as I copied it in, automatically started importing things from .NET and IO. There you go. Eclipse has gotten smarter than it used to be. So we now have everything we need from Java. Remember, we were importing Java IO.star, everything. Java net.star. Well, these are the only things we actually need out of those packages, out of those libraries. And Eclipse has been smart enough to pull those in for us. So I can collapse that code. That's still there, of course. It's just collapsed. That's that little button there. And let's go down and have a look at our new function. So we're going to make a new socket. It's currently talking to my local host on port 6013. If you've changed 6013, you need to change it back. Get an input stream, buffered input, all of that stays the same. String line equals while that. The only thing we need to do is, instead of system out println, we're going to put in our txt output dot set text Now, it's assumed what we want to do is we want to print that line out, which is exactly what we do want to do. But before we do that, we just want to get txt output dot get text, then put the new line. It's gone off the side of the screen. And after that, we want to add that new line character. Just go to the end there so you can see the whole line. So again, we're going to get what it's already in the get text. We're going to add the new line from it, which is going to be the date that we get from our server. We're going to add a new line to the end of that, and we're going to set outputs text to be that whole big string we just made. Now if I run, just noticed I'm a little bit zoomed so I couldn't see all my buttons. Now if I run and I hit get date, I'm going to get a big error. Connection refused, because I forgot to run my server first. Now if you've run your server before, you can go up here and select date server and hit run. I've got server running. Now I can come back to my Swing client and hit run on that, and it should now talk back to my server and get the current date. Notice there's a slight delay in that. That's because it's talking to a server and getting the response back. And just like before, if I keep hitting get date, see all these seconds are changing. There we go, scroll bar kicks in. And that looks pretty good. Now of course, don't forget, if you ask your friend for their IP address and you change this to their IP address, you'll be using their server to get the date. Now just a couple of little cleanup things. There's a button down here, I can never remember which one it is. Display selected consoles, that's right, if I click that it flips me over back to my server and I can shut my server down with the little red stop sign. By the way, if you don't see your DateSwing and your date server in this little drop down box, what you need to do is go to the date server first. While that code's showing, use this run. After you use this run once, it will appear now in this little drop down box. Same with your DateSwing and same with your traditional old date client. Now we've finished this little tutorial. I can go to my date client and run that. It's going to say connection refused because I forgot to run my server again. I closed it before, date server, give it a run, server running. Now if I hit my old date client and give that a run, I get my date here in the terminal. If I run it again, it'll replace that with the current date. It'll just keep going like that. And if I run my Swing, which is much nicer, I get my little window. Oh, got to hit run, don't you? Get my little window, and then I can get the date in exactly the same way, but in a window interface. So we've got two different clients now that talk back to the one server to get the date. We're going to use this technique in our project.